Hello, everyone. It's Sol, and I'm back again for another Zoom meeting. I didn't finish the last, I was thinking, should I do this polarity astrology thing that I started with last time? But I then realized that we have these very interesting aspects, and I'm giving a deeper class on Chiron this coming Sunday. Chiron in particularly in Aries, and how it will affect us the coming years, because it's going to spend quite a while in Aries. And well, we've all been excited about this. It's always fun. I mean, the whole world of astrology goes crazy whenever there's a shift. It's like, yay, finally a change. And it's so ironic in a way, because in many ways we don't like change. So I guess it's human nature. We want it, and then when we get it, we don't want it after all. But now we are in this phase where we are going into Chiron in Aries, and Chiron in Aries is very interesting because it was discovered in Aries. And therefore, I think it holds great symbolic value that it's now coming back after its first conscious round in the zodiac. And it's coming back, and I think that in itself, it will release a great deal of epiphanies into the collective unconscious when it comes in particular to the subjects of healing. Healing has been my passion since the mid-90s, and I continue to learn from great healers around the world, and I continue to learn from their wisdom and their experience. And it's about opening doors, and it's about opening these doors of perception, which were described through many traditions. And therefore, you know, the glyph to Chiron is extremely interesting, because it looks like a key, and in order to open a door you need a key. And this is exactly what healing is all about. It's opening keys to new perspectives, and opening keys to remembering who you really are. And it's opening keys to, opening doors to new potentials within yourself, both in terms of how you can live a life that is more healthy and more in tune with who you really feel you are, a more authentic energy. And truth is healthy. And being truthful is being healthy. So there is something with this kind of pure energy that comes through with Chiron in Aries. It's definitely something that goes with the territory of Aries. It's that authentic expression. And today we live on a planet which is highly distorted by business in particular. This is a business planet, and we are selling ourselves in all the time, and that creates numerous masks that we think we need to keep in order to stay safe, but they actually prevent flow of energy, and the problem becomes cognitive dissonance, inner fighting, and imbalance due to conflicts on the inner levels, which again then creates imbalance in the chakras, or in the organs, and in the hormonal balance of the organism. So truth is healing, truth is healthy, but being truthful demands a lot of courage. So we are definitely entering a very interesting phase of Chiron in Aries, because what comes through in Aries is this courage to be who you are, the will to be who you are, and with the consequences that entails. Because if you're truthful, you also have to accept that other people too will be truthful to you. So, it's a more courageous way of living. It definitely takes us out of the comfort zone. And if we look at the Chiron discovery chart, which we are going to do in a little while, we can see that, humanity at this particular point in its cycle is perhaps incredibly challenged by this lack of authenticity. Fake nails and fake eyebrows and fake this and fake that, just to mention something. There's also other ways we can fake it. And Of course, it creates a lack of trust, because when you don't know who, who you have in front of you, then of course, how can you trust? So it's definitely a very interesting time. But as I said, I will have a class on Chiron in Aries. In particular, this particular Zoom meeting will be about Chiron and the quest for liberation. And I mentioned briefly, because I was in a little situation when Linda came and asked me for the topic, and I was like, oh, what to talk about today. And I just mentioned Chiron Uranus and the quest for freedom, because it's been a subject that's been very important for me the last couple of years, actually, mostly because freedom is such a difficult subject. What is it? And what is freedom, for instance, versus liberation? Because we know that we live under these circumstances that we do, and freedom is a relatively, it's not always available. Sometimes we're stuck in situations where we just have to be. We cannot get out of them. And we are stuck in situations where we wish things were different, but they are what they are. So the Chiron journey is a very particular journey from for a wounded healer archetype within us, where our spirit, which can fly, which can walk on water, which can perform miracles, which can heal diseases, which can experience bliss and ecstasy. Our spirit selves are under the prison of the body, you might say. And the body is limited in its capacities because we don't have wings, for instance. And if we try to walk on water, we will fall, definitely. We will see that gravity takes us. So these are the subjects that I'm working on, both in terms of giving healing to people and trying to encourage a view of peace instead of fight. And therefore, I also included, since I was a little quick to set the theme for this particular talk as Chiron Uranus, I also included Neptune. So I will go into that, and now I will share my screen, my little PowerPoint, which I have made. Let's see if we can figure out where it is. La la la. And how do I do? I do like this, yes. I have a friend. He lives in Dubai. He's a beautiful human being, and he's a very conscious guy. You know, he's a human being. He's Arab, of course. And he told me the other day, it really hasn't been easy to be Arab since 9/11. He's a young man. He's born in the mid-90s. We're going to see his chart a little later. And we had a meditation the other day about freedom and all the judgments that not just he experiences in his life due to racism and prejudice, but also me, you know, being an astrologer, all the judgments, all the continuous limitations that society puts on any individual. And it is like being in a prison, especially for him. I enjoy quite a handsome kind of freedom. He cannot move anywhere. He can't get a visa to this place or that place, or he cannot move. So he's stuck in this country, which he hates. And if he goes somewhere, he's going to meet so much racism. So wherever he turns, he's in this constant feeling of not having freedom, of always being judged, not for who he is at all, but for simply being born where he has been born. And that is, of course, quite unfair. And this is something that creates a lot of anger on the inner levels. And it is a situation that is, well, for many people, it's hard to imagine how it is, because the Americans and the North Europeans, we enjoy a relative freedom. We can travel everywhere, actually. So it's been an interesting experience to get to know him and to figure out life, how it works from a completely different perspective. And seeing that, you know, how can we help individuals who are stuck in war, who are stuck in illness, for instance, chronic illness, who are stuck in situations that seems to be quite difficult to change there and then. When there's no advice to offer, what do you do? And that's the conflict of Chiron, because Chiron, from a Chiron point of view, there might not be an answer, which sounds kind of gloomy, but it's not. Deep spiritual processes, of course. I mean, one of my greatest heroes is Nelson Mandela. He was stuck in prison for 26 years. And he came out forgiving. He came out a hero. He understood something through those 26 years in prison. It's like Moses and the 40 years in the desert. You don't know when it's going to change, but eventually it will, but you just don't know when. And the whole point is to let go of the when and find liberation within what you have there and then. It's not a very happy advice to give anyone. It's like, we don't know when this is going to change, but maybe it will, maybe it won't. I also have another client, actually. She's a Sun Chiron individual, born with Sun Chiron conjunct in Libra. And she is going through in the last 5-6 years, she's been incredibly ill. And now it's just deteriorating. And we had a conversation yesterday where she experienced that it's not going forward. There is no hope. The hope came to an end. And what she's facing now is what we eventually all will face, which is death. And there is nowhere to go. Absolutely nowhere to go. So it's a true Chiron journey, right? Sometimes we are where we are. But we still have a very human longing for liberation. We have a deep longing for freedom. It's a human right in a way. We know it, we feel it inside our hearts. It is what we are here to experience. And it makes no sense that there's no freedom to enjoy. If it's money, if it's status, if it's body, if it's illness, if it's relationships, if it's or race, if it's the country you're born in, whatever it is, there's always something. And it denies us our freedom as human beings. We used to be free. Maybe we had moments of freedom when we were children. I went to India recently and I had those moments of freedom. I re-experienced my childhood being in India. Because I forgot all about time. I had no idea what time it was. So it took me like 2 weeks to remember what day it was. Like Tuesday, Monday, what day is it today? I had no idea what date it was. And it was such a marvelous freedom. I had no idea what time of day it was. There was no plan. I could stay, I could play, I could be. That was freedom. It was relative, of course. I still live on Earth, but freedom is a state of mind. It's not a condition. And a lot of things, you know, that I've been thinking about, reflecting on during my time training for healing, is that how come some people end up in prison, like Mandela? Mandela's been with me since I was 16. And, you know, it's always coming back to my mind. I mean, I went to Robben Island where he sat. And I had a close experience with his conditions. And you might ask yourself from a karmic point of view, what is it that we are here to learn through those kinds of experiences? Chronic illness, for instance, seems very, very unjust. And it is, you know, like, why am I ill and the others aren't? So we have all these limitations on our lives. And this is the Chiron journey. It's that wing clipping. It is that humiliating ego experience, like, oh, I wish I was a hero, but I'm not. I cannot walk on water. I wish I could. but I cannot. So Chiron is a kind of archetype that describes being human. Being human. And being human is such a big concept, because we spend our lives playing roles and masquerading, and sometimes we do things more or less like robots. We make love like robots, so we work like robots, and we live our lives waiting. Not all of us, I'm generalizing, of course. There are moments of love and bliss and everything, but this is part of the states of many people's lives. And I think, you know, the sadness that comes with it, the life that was lost in a way, that being denied that particular sense of adventure that was supposed to be life, to not have the energy to express your talents, to not have the right environment to express your talents, to express yourself in, is a very large part of why humanity is suffering. And being alive, having that feeling of aliveness, coming in contact with your life force, being in the vital forces of your own life, is what is life. So therefore, all these masquerades, all these things that we think we have to do, and we sometimes have to do, is denying health itself. And now, for those of you, I'm just assuming you know the mythology of Chiron, but he was a bastard child of Saturn and a nymph, and they both abandoned him when he was born. His mother thought he was a hideous creature, and he was sent on to his own journey as a toddler to find his own truth, and ended up on the mountaintop receiving lectures on astrology and healing and herbal medicine and wisdom, and ended up being a teacher for heroes. And he was that human, that part animal, part God. He was like we are. We are part immortal, and then we are part mortal. Part of us is mortal, and hopefully part of us is immortal, right? So we have that spirit body challenge in our lives, and this is Chiron in itself. Chiron is the bridge to these outer planets, and Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune. Oh, my daughter wants to go to bed now, so I have to move into the kitchen. We are redoing our house, so it's a little, everybody's everywhere these days. Okay, so I'm in the kitchen now. All right. And that bridge between the worlds is what in itself, it is a symbol of that particular schism between the spirit, the transpersonal realm, where we are, our personalities are released, and the personal planets, the social and the personal planets, from Saturn and to the Sun. So this is an interesting existential problem for being alive. Because there will always be this longing for the heavens, the bliss, the spiritual connection. And this is, you know, why was Chiron discovered when it was, etc., etc. We always look into these things as astrologers. We always try to figure out what exactly was the zeitgeist that made this particular archetype come through into our conscious realm. And humanity is now ready to emerge into the age of Aquarius, and there will be a lot of personal healing for each individual before that is possible, because you can just see how any group will be destroyed, how we destroy each other, how we constantly battle ourselves, and it's not what that group thinking that is the Aquarian age is about. The Aquarian age is about cooperation, not about competition. not the way that we see today, people battling each other for a piece of bread. From the Aquarian point of view, the cooperation is not extinguishing the individual flame at all. So this is why I think, you know, Chiron is in Aries. It was discovered in Aries, and the individual flame that's been denied has to be relit in order for us to manage to get to that concept we call the Aquarian age, because we cannot deny each individual true talent. A true cooperation would have a natural hierarchy where those with the right kind of skills or the right kind of persona or the right kind of qualities would be either the natural leader or the natural networker, the natural communicator, the natural healer, the natural this and that. Like every skill would be used. Like we can use everyone. Everyone is useful, but we are different. And from a competitive point of view, since we put a higher status on leadership, for instance, or on fame, as we do in our culture, we tend to see that that's like, you know, these people are less worth, those are more worth, etc. So it takes everything that is the foundation of the Aquarian principle away. You know, it makes it a hunter's society where the winner takes it all. And it creates so much imbalance for Earth that we are exhausting its resources. The race for more for me is just taking over. So it's a human dilemma, of course, because we have these powerful instincts. We have that powerful instinctual drive to survival. So what happens, Chiron is that part human, part animal, part God. And what happens with Chiron individuals in particular is that they realize that there is consciousness available for us to get in touch with the autonomous nervous mechanisms in our bodies. So we don't necessarily always just act on the triggers. We can start to civilize without suppression. I remember reading Erin Sullivan's book on Saturn, and she said it's a great book, Saturn in Transits, it's called. And I think it's in the preface, she mentions that, you know, civilization has a price. That price is suppression of the individual ego. I'm not sure, that's not, you know, word by word how she described it, but it is exactly how we created cooperation until this point. It's through suppression. Like, I'm not going to tell, I'm just going to keep it in, I'm just going to, for the sake of this and that. And then you have those who are the nice ones, and then you have those who are the bullies. And the story goes on. It's just the same story over and over again. People are not telling, they are not confronting, they're doing it for the sake of peace, but it has a very high price. I have no count on how many individuals I guided through difficult work situations where they became ill due to colleagues and friction between colleagues. It's like, it's never ending. And we see this today too with the Me Too coming up. Like, a lot of harassments and stuff are being voiced, I mean, expressed. Like, this is enough now. And maybe there has to be some sort of massive reaction, as we've seen with the Me Too campaign, but maybe we will also find some more constructive way of dealing with this and take more responsibility, that those who are also the victims, those who are feeling victimized, also need to, you know, have more courage, for instance, and be more confronting and come out more clearly with their energies, be more expressive, not so passive, etc. Yeah, so this is a very interesting phase humanity is facing right now. I'm of course super excited. I'm born with Chiron in Aries myself, right? So it's still been a little mystery for me, right? So, but I'm now going into my Chiron return by sign, and it's like a completion of some sorts, where I feel like those missing links of understanding truly what Chiron in Aries means collectively in particular, but also for me in my life in terms of how I express myself, etc. I think, you know, it's going to heal a lot of that individual flame, and in particular also perhaps heal that inherent loneliness that it means to be, just means to be alive. We're going to die alone. We were born alone. We are alone. I mean, you can hold hands with people and feel companionship, but we are alone, you know, and it's not a bad thing. Loneliness is a very isolated emotional situation, but being alone and understanding aloneness as something natural, as part of being a multitude of beings on earth is quite nice, actually. There's a lot of freedom in this kind of realization. And we also see that Uranus is in Aries. So for this particular month, you know, next month, Uranus will enter Taurus. But for this particular month, both of them will occupy the sign of Aries. And we also see there's a lot going on in Aries. We have Uranus, and, well, Sun is moving out now, but we have Aries there, and Mercury will also stay in this particular period. So I'm thinking, yeah, it's time to set those boundaries and maybe get to learn what they are about. You know, what does it mean to say no? What does it mean to say yes? If you can say no properly, you can also say yes properly. You know, you can mean it. And this individuation process is not easy at all. You know, until you know who you are, you might live in some sort of restriction or limitation. I was gifted with an inherent knowledge of, I'm just an astrologer. That's, you know, like I had a dream when I was very, very young that I was an astrologer, and that was it. I just knew. And I can appreciate that because I see the struggle that people go through in terms of really stabilizing their intention on earth. Why am I here? Finding the plan is the hardest thing. In esoteric traditions, that's why we meditate, to find our particular spiritual plan on earth. And it doesn't always make sense. Let's say you were Nelson Mandela. You had to sit 26 years in prison, burning with enthusiasm and engagement and activism. And you try to make sense. Why am I denied my plan? Is this my plan? Is the plan, is part of the plan, is it getting there? Huh? And the answer is, of course, yes. I mean, half of the plan is finding it. That's the plan, you know. First, you have to go on that journey. Now, Joseph Campbell, who himself was an Aries, he described that very well through the hero's journey, which is, well, it's more or less something that everybody who gets involved in astrology these days will sooner or later run into, you know, this cycle of self-realization and this cycle of the adventurer maturing into his full power, his kinghood, her queendom, you know, becoming that ruler. And when you become that ruler in your own life, when you rule your own being, when you rule your instincts, when you rule your life, when you create the life that you want within the parameters that you have, you will feel that loneliness. You will feel that all these things that, you know, all these things, the mechanisms, the support mechanisms that oddly enough kept you weak, they will have to go. You know, you have to make your own decisions. You have to be more or less autonomous. You have to be ready to take your own steps. And just look at the image we have coming up these next years with Chiron in Aries. They will go a little back and forth into Pisces again. And then from 2019, they will both, Uranus will be in Taurus for a long period of time, and Chiron will be in Aries for a long period of time. And both of them both these signs deals with autonomy and individuality. So it's a great time for that particular thing that we've been waiting for, that particular emergence of the self. Learning to trust your own resources, learning to trust your intuitions, learning to trust that inner voice that informs you all the time. This is right, this is wrong. And it will eliminate so much neurotic energy, because we go out of ourselves and we say, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And that could be a good thing sometimes, but it can also be a bad thing. It can weaken our intention. It can weaken us because we don't know what reactions we get. Not all people will agree. I don't think you should do that. I don't think you should do that. You know, I've had lots of clients coming up lately and saying, well, this astrologer said this and that astrologer said that. You know, who am I to believe? And I say, don't believe any of them. Let's see if you can figure this one out yourself. Maybe I can help you there, you know? That's always my point of view. It's like, yeah, you have the answer. We just need to figure out if you can see it, and then take away everything else that distorts that intuition. So that's why I cannot separate healing from astrology. It's impossible. Then it's just something for the mind. It's like another kind of comfort. I can quiet my neurosis for another month. Eventually, if you want to be free, you have to deal with individuality. This is a very beautiful thing. You know, from the 1950s up until the 1980s, Chiron and Uranus spent a long time in opposition to each other. So today on Earth, and this beautiful generation born in the 1950s, who were the pioneers within alternative thinking. These were the ladies that greeted me when I first came and I wanted my own office. They were born with this Neptune, Uranus, Chiron T-square. And they had that kind of, yeah, we were the weirdos who started it all. We started with the reflexology. We started with the Reiki healing. We started with the self-development. They started something incredibly groundbreaking for Earth. And it took form around 1977, you know, like in the late 70s. There were a lot of awareness around, you know, ecological thinking. I remember my mother was completely obsessed about pollution at that time. I mean, there was like a, she was very gloomy about it, you know. She was like, oh, this pollution, it's going to, everything is dying in a way. She went on and on about that when I grew up. And it was that kind of emergence of holistic thinking that came out. And those who started it, a lot of them were born in the 50s. You can see one of them. I'll just show you, Greg Braden. This chart came to me today, actually. Greg Braden is published through Hay House. You probably heard about him. He's a scientist. I think he's a biologist. And he's also, you know, extremely, he's very concerned with everything that has to do with, oh, hello, come back. Has to do with holistic thinking. So we're sure if I can figure out how to, yeah, I can draw. Yeah. So his Chiron is here in Capricorn, and he's opposing his Uranus here. And it squares his Neptune down here in Libra. So he's, you know, he's been highly influential in terms of understanding vital energy, in particular prana, as we like to call it. And of course, you know, there's still a lot of things to be discovered in these areas. I remember, before we started recording, I told Linda that I've been giving massages today, because once a month I do that. I give massages. It's just to keep some balance, and it's very good to use the body when you use the mind so much, right? So I learn a lot, and I massage people who are completely on, I would say, like a third stage consensus, if that makes any sense. These are very resourceful people. They're not stupid at all, very intelligent. Some of them are sniffing out the individualizing phase. They're coming to my meditation class, for instance, and sometimes I can give them a little bit of healing. I'm not imposing nothing. I'm just exploring. And what I'm exploring is their nervous system. Is I'm giving them their first glimpse of this prana, this vital energy dimension that is making us all so human. That's the real truth of our beings. What goes on inside our nervous system, our hormonal balances. That's the real experiences we have, how we experience life. If you have a cortisol injection from the adrenals, you will feel stressed out because your blood is completely boiling with this kind of tension. And where does it come from? Well, it comes from some of the energy centers, of course, which is sensing into the environment. Now I'm in danger, now I'm not, now I'm in danger, now I'm not. And stress is always like, oh, I'm in danger, I cannot do this shit. And it poisons the blood and it colors the way you perceive things. Doesn't mean what you perceive is real, not at all. It's completely veiled by your biological state. And you can be as evolved as you like, but that's going to happen sooner or later for everyone. You know, I lose it too. Huh? I get really triggered sometimes and lots of hormones are injected into my blood and I go crazy, yeah? And I lose that connection to the spirit world. I lose my spiritual self in a way and perhaps end up in a war, in a conflict, in a confrontation, in something that is destructive, as Chiron himself did, you know. I think that the symbology of the Chiron myth is so, so beautiful. He was stuck there between two heroes fighting, and one of them had an arrow dipped in the blood of Hydra. And, you know, I don't know what he thought, like he could stop these crazy maniacs from fighting. Sometimes we do get involved in conflicts that are not ours, right? And we get hurt from them. And this is a very, you know, Chiron expression, like, but I didn't do it, but I got hurt, right? I had nothing to do with it, but still I'm the one in pain here. Because Chiron receives that arrow into his animal flesh, that part of him which is the animal, and he becomes severely ill, but he cannot die from the pain because he's immortal. And there you go. That's how my Chiron conjunct Sun client is feeling for the time being. And that's also how my friend in Dubai is feeling for the time being. Like he cannot die from the situation. He would love change, but there ain't no yet. And why? It's a very good question. Why? Maybe just because that's life. It's difficult to accept, I know. I mean, we don't want limitations. Some of us, we don't want death, we don't want illness, we don't want pain. And life can be excruciatingly painful. Incredible. It's like there's no release from it. I also do a lot of Pluto counseling, which is like this. Okay, so now you have 3 years of Pluto. Well, let's start with one appointment and then we just go through it. I'll walk you through the tunnel of Pluto. And it's that in the beginning, there's no solutions available. There's nothing. There's like this pit darkness thing. I would love to show you the chart of, I wonder what, the chart of, what? Oh, Sun. Sorry, I have this new program and I have no idea how to handle it, evidently. Oh, so now, okay. So now erase this thing. Thank you. All right, so yeah, so here's the Chiron discovery chart. In itself, a very interesting chart. It was discovered at 10 a.m. in Pasadena. Oh, sorry, give me a break. It was discovered at 10 a.m. in Pasadena in 1st of November, 1977. And we see Sun-Uranus conjunction in Scorpio opposing Chiron itself and Pluto on the North Node in Libra with Neptune in the 12th house. Now, this is very powerful signatures in any chart. If you had that chart and you were born with this chart, you'd say, oh, this is a very interesting life. Aries is also conjunct the South Node, which is like this incredible rage that comes from just simply being, or injustice, or this painful experience of being an outsider. And I think so when you get into a situation where if you have a very active Chiron in your chart and you get that, for instance, chronic illness, or in the case of my friend where he has to be trapped in Dubai, a country he hates, you know, you feel kind of imprisoned. You feel that rage of, why do I have to go through this? Look at the freedom everybody else has. And it's that pain of comparing yourself to others, because that's not fair from a holistic point of view. It's not realistic to compare yourself to others, because you are born with whatever you're born with. And comparing yourself to others, like my old client is doing now. She's like, everybody else is having and enjoying a great life, and I'm here, I'm locked to my bed. I can't move because of some vertigo, and I'm, you know, she's overweight due to a lot of medications and shit like that. You know, people are not visiting her. She's lonely, etc. And on the inside, she has the spirit of a 14-year-old girl. She wants to fall in love. She has dreams. She feels entrapped in her body. She's just the perfect Chiron mythology in her life. I see this, you know, like every time I look at her chart, it's just the same thing over and over again. She can't get out of that stage of rage and negotiation and depression. And she's sort of holding on to, clinging on to those dreams, those illusions, Neptune, that are not helping her get a better life. It's just creating more suffering because she cannot have it. It's like the matchstick girl, you know, look at them sitting there eating their fancy dinner, and I'm out here freezing. I'm cold. I have to be here, and they are in there. I'm on the outside. And that's, you know, that's part of individuating, actually. It's part of being an individual. I have a very beautiful friend. She's Sun Uranus Libra. She was suicidal when she grew up. She grew up, you know, some Uranus individuals are sometimes growing up in these elite situations, and she did. She's the daughter of a very famous CEO, and they grew up with strict etiquettes, and you know, you behave like this and that, you don't do this and that, and it's very cold. I mean, she senses, her mother is Aquarian, and she senses this lack of real warmth from her, and it's been an ongoing thing. And her father is completely like, he's not there. And she had to deal with these neuroses, these electrical energies in her body, her fears, her nervous system, Uranus, going crazy, you know, just like due to things that had happened suddenly in her upbringing. Like suddenly she had an adoptive sister that was her age when she was 12. And she experienced that the parents, which never sort of gave her warmth, gave this girl everything. And it was like this deep trauma in her, and it never healed. And she felt completely without value, right? And this incredible awareness that she was so different. And Uranus brings in this heightened awareness due to this very sensitive nervous system. Like everybody's lying, but I'm seeing beyond the lies. I'm seeing truth here, right? Like it sets you apart. It takes you out of the context. It takes you away from the rest. It takes you out of the group. To do what? Well, in the case of my friend, it was to eliminate those values that she was brought up in. She still carries those values. I can see it, like a little snobbery. It's like a little like this princess kind of energy. But she's changed. She's changing. It's not going quickly, of course. It's taking a lot of time. She's changing. She has some opposite Chiron as well. And she's changing little by little into having values that are more human, that are more right for her, where she's not pushing herself into becoming someone. She accepted her illness in a way. She accepted that she is so highly sensitive that she cannot be around human beings for a length of time if there's a lot of destructive energy in those human beings, if there's a lot of masquerades, if there's a little truth, she will feel bored. She will feel like she falls out. And so falling out is part of individualizing. And it is actually an expression of a longing for freedom. Being ill is when the healing begins, because the illness we spend so much time building an illness due to these karmas, due to Saturn. It's just what we do in our family. It's tradition, you know. Saturn. We repeated this for so long, of course. And then Uranus comes along, and through Chiron, illness. Like, I'm the only one going crazy in this family, but I'm also the one with the voice of the truth. I'm the rebel. So her illness is her healing. It doesn't seem so, because she's walking those 40 years in the desert. She's waiting for liberation. She's waiting for freedom. And it is so beautiful in a way that this generation between the 50s and the 80s, they are very into this energy healing. This is the Reiki generation, like this is through that generation that a lot of these generations, that a lot of the old esoteric knowledge came back, right? And of course, through those later generations where Uranus, Neptune are conjunct from the 90s and then into the 2000s, we will see that consciousness come to fruition in the way that, I'm bringing in my old buddy Jesus here again. He said, whatever I can do, you will do better. And yeah, definitely they will. Absolutely. We're going there, but it's taking time, It's taking time, and that time is not always easy to accept. It might take lifetimes, but we don't know that, right? And this is where these 7 stages of healing comes in. The first stage is denial. This is where the family of my friend is in complete denial. We have no problems. This is a perfect family. Dee-dee-dee-da-dee-dee-do-do-do. And I see it very often as well, like my friend with Sun Chiron conjunct in Libra, this old woman, she's like, I don't want to accept that I'm ill. Like, her 14-year-old spirit is still really a rebel towards her illness. She's like, no, I'm not ill. So denial is should not be underestimated. The power of denial, the power of cognitive dissonance, the power of being able to lie to yourself. Lying to yourself creates an illusion that you are healthy, that you can do things that you used to be able to do. Like my friend who is suffering from some burnout syndrome, she's young, she's younger than I am. She's like, you have no idea, Soul. She told me today, in what crazy denial I was in. Like I mean, I was in such a denial that now, all the social welfare money I should have had, they aren't coming because I didn't ask for them, because I thought I was good enough. I thought I could do this. I didn't think I was ill. And I told her something that I find to be true. And I said, you're not ill. It's the values of society that are quite distorted and quite ill. And it's problem with Chiron is often the stigma, like, okay, I'm the ill one, the other ones are the healthy ones. I'm the one who couldn't do it. I couldn't follow the rhythm of the expected rhythm of manifestation. I was like, didn't graduate, or like I did my own thing, or I couldn't graduate because I was so mentally chaotic at that time. So I had no idea what I wanted to be, and I just didn't want to get any odd job because it didn't feel right. It made me ill. So it's very testing, right? It's extremely testing. And when denial is broken, when you see that, okay, the organism is broken, it's not the soul that is broken. It's the organism that is broken due to this abusive system, this abusive state of affairs that is on Earth. Self-abuse, self-exploitation, slavery, modern slavery, old forms of slavery, racism, you name it. There is just so much abuse of energy, and you can just go in and try to see for yourself as well. When do you abuse your energy? When do you waste it? it's quite a lot, actually. So if you want to have surplus of energy, if you want to have lots of energy, you have to stop abusing your energy, which for some individuals means don't binge watch Netflix series while you dream of writing a book. Write the book instead. And if you can't write the book, work towards managing to write that book. Don't spend 300 hours on Facebook each week. Do something creative with it. But I don't know what to do with it. Exactly. Find out. That's individuating. That's asking yourself those difficult questions. What is my energy? Who am I? So when denial releases from the consciousness, when there's no denial, that's when we become humans in a way. This is when it becomes interesting, of course, to have conversations with people, because then they're opening up to this. Yeah, me too. I sort of go through that too. Yeah, sure. I see what you mean now. But the inner conflict is still there, like, I don't want this. There's like this flip-flop. And then you come into anger. Why am I the only one who goes through this? And we see this Eris conjunct the South Node. Why do I have to go through this? And everybody else are free to not having to experience this. And then there's this phase called negotiations. Now, let me just add here, I took these stages from a woman called Barbara Ann Brennan. She was my first healing teacher, because I bought these big books, big fat books, and I took my Reiki classes back in the 90s. And these stages, she writes about them in Light Emerging. And they were just stuck in me, and since I've been working on that, I see it, and I see how people go through these stages very clearly. Me too, I go through these stages as well. We can have some parts of us that are really functioning well and other parts that are completely dysfunctional. So none of us are perfect. We're human. But the anger, is like this fighting, this Don Quixote phase where you're fighting windmills, and it's like, I don't want it to be like this. I want it to be different. It's not fair. And then comes the negotiation, which could go through prayers, or it could go through rigorous training, or it can go through dieting, or it can go through, just trying to be a better human being because you think you're karmically flawed or you did something wrong. People take illness very personal, as if it was something you did. Now, I learned through the homeopathy that, a lot of our illnesses are collective energies. You didn't do nothing. Just release it if you can. Let's build strength so you don't get infected by these collective viruses that are everywhere. That's why individuation takes isolation. It's part of individuation. You have to be alone a little bit so you can find that core again. But the negotiation takes many forms, and it always leads to the same, a sense of failure. Oh, I did all my mantras and I did all my yoga asanas and I'm still feeling like shit here, right? It didn't work. The medicine won't work, yeah. So then we turn to depression because our energy gets deflated. We're completely exhausted by fighting disease. Now, one of the primary rules in healing is that if you fight something, it just grows. Mm-hmm. So it's a very tricky one. So how do you not fight it? You go into acceptance, and what is that? What does that mean? Because that's the fifth stage, acceptance. This is when the healing begins. Okay, so I'm here in a wheelchair, or I'm here in my bed, and we will all die. I have this illness, I have to learn to live with it, etc., etc. Acceptance is not a passive state. It's realism. What can I do with my situation? How can I work within what I have? Or as Nelson Mandela would say, okay, I still have 13 years to go, what to do? So he started teaching people, I saw the cave when he held his educations. He taught people to read and write inside that cave. They were working outside in scorching heat, digging. And they had this cave where they went to the toilet. And inside that cave, he gave his lectures. That's what he did. Within the frames of his existence, he managed to express himself. Well, as you can see, I'm a big fan. And then comes the sixth stage, which is like, okay, so now I accepted it. I rediscovered, I remembered who I am. Really, I remember who I am. I took away every disease in my body, not in terms of what the body is dealing with, but in terms of what created it. And somebody is requested to control my camera. I don't know. I will decline that one. When there's this kind of taking away the origins, the consciousness, the values, the archetypes and the complexes that created the disease, so you are no longer identifying with the disease, as D.H. Lawrence wrote, who was also a Sun Chiron individual. I don't know if it was the conjunction or the square, it's one of them. He said, it's not me who is ill, it's the mechanism that's ill. And then you are disassociating from the illness. You're not, yes, I'm ill. It looks like a guy in a wheelchair is like, please just forget I'm in a wheelchair. I'm a human being, right? I'm fine. Yeah? I found peace. I have a complete life within that framework. And then you begin reconstructing your life, right? You begin creating a life that's based on these new values, on these new experiences, on these new insights into yourself. You become the new authentic you, and you test it in the world. Is it safe to confront people, or should I keep on suppressing energy and become ill myself? Is it safe to be me? Am I ready to accept the consequences of my authentic self? And if that happens, which I think, it happens sooner or later for everyone, you have that feeling of resurrection. Then eventually, maybe the body will get healed too. We don't know. I mean, in Chiron's case, the body dissolved and he went on to become, well, the centaur in the Sagittarius in the heavens. They gave him, the gods granted him his liberation. And in a way, that's a resurrection kind of phase. And it's indicated in the Chiron discovery chart, both by Sun conjunct Uranus in Scorpio, which is also this phoenix, this re-emergence, this healing, actually, like the complete transformation. And Pluto on the North Node, which can make it safe to be in the world again. You are now suddenly you. You're not what you think other people want you to be. You are you. And it's just a great sense of peace and love, and it's true energy. You get true energy, not fake energy. Like, it's not dependent on the acceptance of other people. I don't care, I don't give a shit. People don't love me, so I don't know. What the hell can I do, It's nothing to do. I can start fighting it, but it won't help. They will probably just hate me more. I have nothing to prove. It's not a trial. And then you start using, at least in my experience, energy a little bit more wisely. You don't squander it so easily, because every drop of life is important. So there's a difference between freedom and liberation. There's this slight understanding. If you reflect upon it, if you meditate on it, you will see freedom is, in a way, non-existent. But liberation is available for everyone, even those who are in prison, because it's a state of mind. It's an expression of you. So it's really, in all that pain, there's a certain sense of beauty. Of course, you can become completely poetic when you talk about Chiron, because it's so beautiful, and it's so painful because it's so real. It's what we go through, all of us, in one way or another. If it isn't visible, maybe there's something else. Most people just live in that denial. Consensus, a lot of them suffer from a high degree of denial. I have a large group for meditation these days, and there's a little bit of variety in the levels of consciousness I see easily. And I'm like, okay, so some of these people never, ever peeked inside They just heard about meditation as something fancy they want to explore, right? But they never confronted themselves. And I saw immediately when I took them into meditation, we did the 3 lower bodies, we did the body, we did the mental, and we did the emotional body. And I saw like some of them were going through some massive crises or some massive reactions, like, oh, this was a little bit more than I bargained for. Like post-traumatic meditation disorder, I will probably have to deal with a little bit as the class progresses. You see, there are some questions here. Let's see. There's 2 minutes left. Okay, yeah, all right. Yeah, but I think I covered it actually. Do I have time for this little chart of my friend from Dubai?
Yes, certainly. Go ahead. Yes.
Thank you. You will see that, just to give it a little bit more astrology meat to the bones, let's see if we can draw a little bit on my friend's chart. He's born, and his date is exact. He's born with this interesting combination of Uranus, Neptune in Capricorn. So there again, you see this massive, like, I live in Dubai. I have all these patriarchs around me. They are deciding my life. There's no freedom here. It's in the 12th house. So it's all a little bit, the 12th house is where those powers of lives are bigger than your personal will. It is not something you can do anything about. It's like shouting to the storm to stop storming. So it's a quite challenging experience for him. He's really in some suffering because he cannot move. He's stuck. And there's no way to go. And his Chiron is conjunct Mercury. He's got very good healing talents, this man. And it's inconjunct. So there's this massive need for some sort of, what do you say in English? Some sort of, you have to adapt. And any inconjunct, any 150 degrees aspect, the quincunx, you probably know it as, is requiring from us that we adapt. We just have to adjust. You can't get it all. You have to, it's like being a little wing clipped. And right now Pluto is it's crossing his ascendant. So I was sort of expecting that. I spoke to him a little bit before that happened. I said, oh, there's some big changes coming in. I know, well, okay, so it's Pluto, so it's not going to be very easy. Yeah? And it squares Aries, this big, and trines Mercury. So Aries is involved as well, so it's sort of when you try to look back at the discovery chart of Chiron and you look into Aries as well, which is very important. She's in Aries for all of humanity, except some individuals who are born with it, with Chiron in Pisces, who are still alive. But for most of us, it's in Aries. And you can see that, that is a part of that collective healing we're going through, this problem of individuation and the need for individuation. And I think, that's why we live more and more single lives. We live less in big families and in big groups, and we miss it, of course, but it's necessary for us to be able to find our own core. My Chiron is actually exactly conjunct his Aries. So that's probably why I come into his life like some sort of Chiron birth healer kind of mentor, which I experience. And it is just an amazing, strong symbolism in terms of being stuck somewhere, right? Being under these conditions where you cannot breathe. It's a little claustrophobic. But of course, I have hopes that Pluto on the ascendant will push forward some new beginnings, and I think it will, It might take a little bit longer than anticipated. It always does, but at least, the potential is there. So, yeah. So thank you very much. I think that was like a crash course in healing and Chiron and Neptune and Uranus in one breath.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sol. That was amazing. Thank you. We'll see you next time. We really must wind down now. We'll catch you next time.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you from all of us. Bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Sol. That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day, everyone. Yeah.